This is a difficult time for those of us who are teaching boys. Once upon a time, I would have said to this boy, if you listen closely to me, I will tell you what you need to know in order to find your way in the world. But increasingly, we educators are becoming more and more uncomfortable because we don't know the questions they will ask down the road. We don't know what is going to happen. Around the globe, boys are sounding the alarm. Perhaps they are the canaries within our educational system. 2/3 of students identified in special education are boys. 80% of those diagnosed with an emotional or a behavioral difficulty, disorder, are boys. 2 out of 3 students who are likely to drop out of school are boys. Apparently, our boys are not listening like they once did. Recently, I was at a school and I had an opportunity to observe an interaction between a school principal and a boy who I assumed had misbehaved in some way. And what I perceived to be anxiety, discouragement, and frustration was interpreted as rude behavior when this person said, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." When boys are floundering, it is tempting. We are prone to look for targets of blame. Poor role models, many people believe. It's no longer cool to do well in school. Some people say it's a readiness issue. Just yesterday, I heard one of the TEDTalks speakers describing his 5-year-old son in kindergarten, and he relayed to me the report his classroom teacher shared with him, that his boy was only having one difficulty at school, and that was sitting still at circle time. Do you know that if you are a boy born at the very end, that cutoff date, just before entry into kindergarten, that you are 60% more likely to be identified as having ADHD than a child born one day later? Readiness is an issue. We know that speech clarity, 99% of articulation is clear among girls, typically at age 3. And for boys, it's age 4.5. But let's understand that this doesn't mean all girls speak clearly at age 3 and all boys speak clearly at age 4. There are some girls who speak clearly as early as age 1.5, and those are the girls who show up to kindergarten ready to teach. And there are boys who really show up to kindergarten who don't have clear speech yet. When we're looking for easy targets of blame about boys and their disengagement from school, video gaming certainly gets its fair share of criticism. Finally, why not blame the hardworking women who work in our schools? Why not claim that our classrooms are too feminized? You should know that a study of 9,000 boys who are 11 years of age found that the gender of the teacher made no difference in their learning outcome. But that shouldn't surprise you because gender doesn't determine effective teachers. Effective teaching determines the experience in the classroom. And so, when you look at these boys up here, and then you look at this photograph of these girls, we have to acknowledge that there is some truth to this tendency. But it is a binary trap to assume that all boys learn differently than all girls. It can lead to naive solutions that are misguided and don't focus on the real issues of today. Of course, comedians poke fun at this simple view of gender. They poke fun at our gendered tendencies to do this or to do that. But there are serious limitations to this either-or thinking. Limitations that lead us to easy solutions like single-gendered schools. By the way, I'm not against single-gender schooling. I completely support it, but only if thoughtful consideration and discussion leads us to that solution. Mostly, though, I agree with the Australia Principals Association that says separating boys and girls in public schools would be equivalent to gender apartheid. Children need to be together to learn how to get along. Gender is important, yes, but we need to focus on other issues. We need to consider the very purpose of education. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to do an internet search with the keywords purpose of education and got 121 million hits within 1.2 seconds. So it's safe to say that there are a lot of different opinions out there about what our purpose is. Well, recently I got a chance to speak with this boy about his trials and tribulations at school. He doesn't like school. He's uncomfortable. He feels like his intelligence isn't really expressed in this environment. Apparently, this boy has a written output problem, which wasn't even a diagnosis when I was a boy. When we left the topic of schooling and we considered his discretionary passions, he described to me his love of robotics. He also then described to me how he would program his family's PVR. He's the only person who could do it. He would upload his movies that he'd made with his robotics and other family antics to iMovie, add a mustache to mom, something goofy onto dad, and then upload it to YouTube. And this boy has an output problem? He figured out these technologies on his own. He's self-taught. And when you consider what he's doing here, and you think about the education many of us had many years ago, the weekly spelling bee just doesn't cut it anymore. As I really listen to boys, I hear that they are discouraged about what we are offering them. And I also want to add that many girls are too. We have to acknowledge that for most children, by the time they are 5, they are bombarded with more information than our grandparents were when they were 20. A 10-year-old can access more information through his mobile or her mobile device than our government could 50 years ago. We teachers are no longer the gatekeepers of education. %80 of video game players are male, which has led me to consider an interesting possibility. Because technology influences the brains of developing children. I'd like you to look at this next slide and raise your arm when you see something else besides 5 shapes. Just count them. All right, so it looks like we've got about half of you. Don't worry, it's not an intelligence test for those of you who don't see anything else yet. Let me help you out. There is a word hidden up there. Now how many of you see it when I've cued you with some auditory instruction? And some of you still don't see it. I won't ask you to raise your arms. The word up there is fly. Now please put up your arm when you solve this problem. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. How many of you are sitting there saying, wait a minute, how could they be solving this problem when I don't even know what the question is yet? Please raise your arms, those of you who don't know what the question is, and look around the room. Please look around the room, because these are the people who are at risk. at risk of misinterpreting, misunderstanding those boys and girls who have learning preferences toward highly spatial visual learning. Let's go on to grade 2. Just kidding. But this explains this, and this, and this, and this. And these highly engaging visual ways of communicating thought. Architects, engineers, designers, sculptors, painters, and yes, video game designers all grew up in word-dominated classrooms. Especially, they struggled in their early years. What if teachers had the resources to create more visually engaging classrooms? You might find that children, we would be getting out of the way so that children could publish their own YouTubes, perhaps publish an anime site, even hack an iPhone. About this point in time, many of you are thinking that I'm recommending more spatially, visually engaging classrooms for boys. I'm recommending them for girls. You see, it is girls that become most disadvantaged if our classrooms are not spatially, visually engaging, because these girls get caught in elementary school in the trap of what I call pretty math, that mathematics is all about being neat and tidy and organized. And of course, they flounder once they move to higher levels of mathematics. So you see, making our classrooms more spatially, visually engaging not only helps those boys who have natural inclinations toward thinking in this way, but it also helps those girls who need to develop this ability. And many girls, of course, have this ability already. The real gap is not a gender gap. The real gap is in motivation, what we're asking students to do day in and day out. We need to think beyond simple boy versus girls notions of teaching. We need to avoid the bandwagon solutions that are associated with this style of thinking. We need to power up our schools and recognize that they are different today. Children are different today. We need to teach the children we have, not the children we would like to have or the children we wish we had. Rather than ignoring the canaries in our system right now, rather than ignoring what technology presents to us, rather than ignoring what visually, spatially engaging learning opportunities present to us, let's respond to these needs. Let's respond to all children's needs so we can teach them where they are at. Thank you.